India is more than 2 months into a series of nationwide protests against a new citizenship law known as the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. The CAA makes it easier for migrants from religious minorities, some of whom have been persecuted in their homelands, to get Indian citizenship, unless they are Muslims. The protests are all over the news, not just because of their size or the politicians working the crowds. This past week, a few days after a minister in Narendra Modi's BJP government called for, quote, traitorous protesters to be shot, a gunman infiltrated a demonstration, then shot and wounded a man. This is a political story in which the news media are playing a central role. India has more than 400 24-hour television news channels. Many of them have taken to amplifying the nationalistic pro-Hindu rhetoric of the BJP, labeling protesters anti-national, implying that Muslims are inclined to spread terror and in the process normalizing hate speech and spreading that right across their airwaves. Our starting point this week is New Delhi. India has many problems. Gun control, however, is not one of them, which is why this image was so shocking to so many.
A gun-wielding
man shot at protesters outside the Jamia University.
The anti-citizenship law protests had gone on for months, mostly peacefully. Then, on January 27th at an election rally, a minister in the Modi government referred to the demonstrations and urged his supporters to, quote, shoot the traitors. Rather than condemning an official call to violence issued in public, news channels in the government's corner, for the most part, stuck to what they had been doing since the protests began, questioning the motives, the loyalties of the demonstrators.
They are openly pro-Pakistan now. No qualms about it. They have also become brazenly anti-Indian army.
3 days later came the shooting of a protester in New Delhi.
Such terrorists are radicalized by those who bear a far greater responsibility. That includes the MPs whose voices are amplified by Arnab Goswami, by Republic, by Times Now, by Z, by NewsX and all these channels, right? Sometimes it's outright incitement and sometimes it's bordering on incitement.
मैं अपने दोनों मित्रों से कहता हूं, आप आइए और उन लोगों के खिलाफ भी एक्शन लेने की बात कहिए.
Well, ladies and gentlemen.
When you paint a target on somebody's back like that on primetime television, there are going to be consequences. And you are responsible for those consequences.
The incident of the gunman at the protests has completely exposed where the loyalties and commitments of mainstream media lie. Many of our media outlets stand opposed to democracy. They work as antagonists, as adversaries of democracy.
The loudest of those voices is Arnab Goswami's, although he has plenty of competition. Goswami's news formula relies heavily on social and political conflict.
Every single day.
With some outrage and name-calling thrown in,
The starkness of the truths of
all wrapped in a brand of Hindu nationalism that is straight out of the ruling BJP. The channel that was launched as Goswami's vehicle, Republic, is partly owned by a BJP parliamentarian. India is the land of news channels, more than 400 of them. Other talking heads cut from the same cloth as Goswami, working the same crowd, are Navika Kumar of Times Now, Deepak Chaurasia at News Nation, and ZTV's Sudhir Chowdhury. The ongoing citizenship law demos have allowed those channels to put their nationalistic credentials on full display.
This is open propaganda and of a very dangerous kind. It is not only pro-government propaganda or pro-Modi propaganda.
क्या दिल्ली का इस्लामीकरण हो रहा है? बढ़ती जनसंख्या, हिंदू की घटती जनसंख्या, क्या दिल्ली को कहां लेके जाएगी?
It is actively Islamophobic, hate-mongering propaganda against any kind of dissent in the country. And it has very, very far-reaching and dangerous implications.
We are not pro-BJP at all. We do not affiliate with any political ideology or with any political party. But yes, Zee News is a pro-India channel. Zee News is a nationalistic channel. Zee News supports any force which puts India first. And the kind of popularity Zee News enjoys shows that there is a large number of viewers who believe in what Zee News is showing, who believe in brand India, who believe in the nationalistic approach.
The coverage is not just shocking, but it is problematic and it is disappointing in many ways.
This is a dangerous fallout and consequence of non-stop provocation.
And I would confess, I have worked with Republic Network in India. I have been their anchor since the very beginning. That's one of India's topmost networks, but I was shocked.
Unlike many governments with nationalistic tendencies, the Modi government doesn't put much effort into muzzling the Indian media. It doesn't really have to. Many of the country's news channels are either owned by politicians or business figures close to the BJP. The print sector is more balanced, although Indian papers are heavily reliant on government ad revenues, which can leave their reporting compromised. The online space offers a greater plurality of views and some promising journalism, but those websites simply cannot compete with all the TV news clips that go viral. Commercial realities factor in as well. Things like circulation, ratings. Remember this soundbite?
There is a large number of viewers who believe in what Zee News is showing.
And no wonder. There are almost 5 times as many Hindus in India, roughly 1 billion, than Muslims. Hindus powered Narendra Modi to a landslide re-election last year after the BJP campaigned on an aggressive brand of Hindu nationalism. Indian news executives can do the math. They don't even have to share the BJP's ideology to capitalize on it commercially.
That's the state of media today, except for the new and independent non-traditional media and magazines like Caravan, sites like Scroll, The Wire, News Laundry. These are the places that have sort of kept the pressure on the government. Everyone else is either reliant on government ads and therefore cannot report, or simply agrees with the government.
The corporate media, with the exception of 2 or 3 channels and newspapers, habitually portray anyone who disagrees with the government as so-called anti-national, an enemy of the country.
People who do this are termites. And like termites, they try to destroy the structure that they live in.
It means that anyone who raises their voice against any government policy gets presented by these channels and newspapers as a disgrace to the country, an impediment to development, in fact even seditious.
Which is why demonstrators have come to resent journalists from those channels covering their story. On January 24th, when Deepak Chaurasia of News Nation tried to report from a prominent protest location in Delhi, demonstrators intervened. Chaurasia returned a few days later, along with Sudhir Chaudhary of Zee News, competing channels putting on a show of solidarity, trying to make a point about freedom of expression.
इस लोकतंत्र में अगर किसी की कोई भी विचारधारा है, कैसी भी, वो आपके पक्ष में हो, आपके विपक्ष में हो, वो यहाँ आकर अपनी बात कह सकता है या नहीं कह सकता.
The protesters, they always talk about freedom of expression. They portray themselves as the champion of freedom of expression. They complain about intolerance. But when our reporters now are going on the streets, they are being mishandled. They only like that section of media which is supporting them. They are not open enough and tolerant enough to engage with people like us who have a different point of view.
Corporate media has a pattern of presenting any critique or attempt to question their reporting as an attack on democracy itself.
आप लोकतंत्र की बात कर रहे हैं, आप संविधान की बात कर रहे हैं, हमारा भी अधिकार है कि हम अंदर आ जाएं.
However, when their coverage is so unwavering in its support of the powerful and so consistently at odds with the common man, it enrages people.
I want to live in a democracy that is stable, disciplined and nationalist.
It convinces them that the media is the actual enemy of the nation, that the media is not the hero of democracy, but in fact a villain. possibly as dangerous to our society as any terrorist or militant, and this is why public anger is exploding.